Beautiful, beautiful. Never has an anthem led more naturally into a sermon. No, thank you, choir. Last week we began a worship series on nonviolent communication, NVC for short, and the Bible. We laid out the 4 steps of nonviolent communication. They're in your bulletin. The steps are designed to allow us to come to some connection and meaningful conversation. The first step is observation without evaluation. Say what you notice without adding blame or judgment. Second, feelings. Know how you feel. 3, needs. Understand what important need is behind your feeling. And then requests. Ask clearly for what might help meet your need. Now, over the coming weeks, we'll flesh out each one of those, so you need to understand them completely at this point. Today, we focus on step number 1, observation without evaluation. It's harder than you might think, because our brains are wired to instantly judge and interpret experiences, often mixing what we see with the meaning that we attach to it. You know, evaluation is helpful in many ways. In the evolution of our species, the ability to quickly interpret what is happening has served us well. And so the point is not to eliminate evaluation or judgment, but rather to be aware of it, and also to develop the ability to set aside the meaning that we attached to another person's actions. I'll give you an example. When a person is preaching, chances are they're looking out at the congregation. Right now, you are giving me all sorts of clues as to what you might be feeling. Some of you are looking at me with the most pleasant look on your faces, especially now that I've drawn attention to you. And you know that I'm looking at you. In any congregation, in any sermon, there will be clues of body language, eye contact, frowns, or smiles. On a few occasions through the years, at every church I've been in, one person has told me, I listen to sermons with my eyes closed because it helps me concentrate. And I want you to know I'm not bored and I'm not sleeping. I mean, I pretty much have to take their word for it, but I choose to do that. When I served in New York, I led worship at the annual women's gathering of the New York Conference. I think I did that for 5 years in a row. I mean, that was 20 years ago, and not all New Yorkers were or are affirming of ordaining queer people. And so I got pushback from time to time at this state conference in New York, especially from people that I didn't know personally, that I hadn't built a relationship with. And I distinctly remember there was one woman every year at those women's conferences. I remembered her from year to year, and I sort of dreaded seeing her. Every year at opening worship, I'd scan the crowd. Was she there? Oh yeah, there she is. Again. She sat with her arms crossed. She never sang the songs. She had an expression on her face as if she were accommodating a dill pickle in her mouth. When I would read the anonymous evaluations at the end of the conference, you know, if anything negative was said about worship, I would think, oh, I know who that is. I had to be that woman. I did not know her name, and I did not like her. And in my last year in the New York conference before moving to Texas, there she was again. And after the closing worship, I saw her out of the corner of my eye, smarching her way to me. So I sort of braced myself. And then she came up to me and she threw her arms around me and hugged me so tight. And when she pulled away, she had tears in her eyes. And she said, "I am going to miss you so much." She said, "Your worship services have kept me coming back year after year. Thank you." I was so stunned. I still can't believe, as I'm telling this story, I cannot believe that she said that. I had observed that woman's behavior, and out of my own insecurity, I'd assigned meaning to it. I had assumed I knew what was going on inside of her. And further, my assumption resulted in pain for me. What a waste of energy, of my energy for 5 years. I mean, to be clear, it didn't keep me up at night or anything, but neither did it feel good in those moments. It's very helpful to develop the skill of observation without evaluation. If we can simply observe and not attach meaning, then it might reduce defensiveness and conflict. We avoid assigning blame or labeling others. Here's how it works. Instead of saying, "She's just lazy," we say, "She's not completed the task yet." I mean, that's a comment that invites understanding rather than conflict or shame. Observation without evaluation allows us to see the reality more clearly, to separate facts from our assumptions or interpretations or stories. Curiosity encourages questions like, I wonder what's going on with her, or why might this be happening? I mean, these are comments that open the door to empathy and dialogue and problem solving. Curiosity is such a helpful stance. When we see things as interesting rather than threatening or wrong, then we're more open to learning from experiences. In relationships, it can help us better understand a perspective that we might otherwise dismiss. It can be tricky to identify judgment in observation. Let's do a little practice of recognizing evaluation. Josh will read some observations and we'll consider if they contain evaluation in them.
She's always so slow to respond to emails. I had to wait forever.
That's evaluation. The statement turns one instance, waiting for an email, into a general judgment about the person's character, always so slow, and adds a subjective assessment of the wait, forever. So it mixes observation with personal interpretation.
I sent her an email on Monday and received a reply on Thursday.
Sticks to the facts. What was sent and when the reply came. There's no judgment about the person or about the wait.
My daughter's really independent. She doesn't want to help with homework.
Now, calling her really independent is a label that interprets her behavior, implying a character trait rather than describing what actually happened.
When I offered to help with her homework last night, she said she preferred to do it on her own.
This only reports the action and the response without attaching a judgment or a label.
You know, our neighbors are unfriendly. They don't wave when we drive by.
Is that true?
I'm from the Midwest, it feels true.
The phrase "are unfriendly" assumes intent and attitude rather than just noting behavior. It interprets this lack of waving as a fixed personality trait.
When I drove by yesterday, our neighbors did not wave.
It simply describes what occurred, leaves out assumptions about intent or about character.
This one is true. I'm terrible at running. I had to stop halfway through the trail.
So the speaker interprets their experience as a judgment on their own ability. I'm terrible, rather than just describing the fact that they stopped.
I ran for 10 minutes and then stopped to walk for the rest of the trail.
That's my kind of run. except 10 minutes would be too long. So that focuses on the actions taken without adding a negative self-assessment.
The kids were wild during dinner. They just couldn't sit still.
Wild. It's a subjective judgment. It turns normal child behavior into this negative characterization.
At dinner, the kids got up from the table 3 times and spoke loudly to each other.
This describes exactly what happened without labeling the children. Thank you, Josh. Combining observation with evaluation is problematic because it blurs the line between what actually happened and the meaning that we attach to it. When we mix facts with judgment about a person or a situation or ourselves, we risk misunderstanding, creating defensiveness, escalating conflict. Evaluations often reflect our assumptions, our biases, or emotions, rather than objective reality. And that can lead to miscommunication and unnecessary tension. Simply observing without adding evaluation allows space for curiosity, for empathy, for dialogue. It might help make relationships and interactions clearer and more constructive. 20 years ago, I was so quick to write the story for that frowning woman in the New York conference. And I think it was my own insecurity that made it so easy. In Matthew's Gospel, chapter 7, Jesus says, "Do not judge so that you may not be judged. For with the judgment you make, you will be judged, and the measure you give will be the measure you get." Now, earlier in my life, that reference of judgment carried a tone of a judgment from God. And now I hear it in a sense that how we live, how we interact with the world, carries certain implications. Jesus wasn't telling us to stop noticing things. I like to think he was telling us to pay attention to the difference between what we see and what we assume. He invites us to look clearly, to notice without rushing to judgment, and to stay humble about what we cannot know about another person. That's what observation without evaluation is about. It doesn't mean that we switch off our discernment or that we ignore when something is wrong. It means that we pause long enough to separate what we actually see from the story that we tell ourselves about it. When we do that, there's this spaciousness that opens up for curiosity, for empathy, for relationship, for connection. So here's an invitation for us this week. Walk through the world with softer eyes. Notice what is actually happening and resist the urge to leap to conclusions. If we can do that, we may just discover that those we think are closed off to us just might be ready to surprise us.